There are coaches in the NBA that are viewed by most as masters of the game, well respected, highly sought after, and generally recognized as top-notch coaches. Then, of course, there are those who are viewed as straight-up bad coaches who hop around from team to team, and you're wondering how they were even able to hold a head coaching position in the NBA. And then there are those coaches who are perceived as being great in the league, have had some level of success that they have been able to ride to get them future coaching positions, when in reality, they're just mediocre coaches at best. And time again, we have seen this from Doc Rivers, who after just 3 seasons with the Philadelphia 76ers has been dismissed by the organization after failing to get them beyond the second round and blowing yet another lead and losing in closeout games to get them to advance to the conference finals. And so in this video, we're going to be discussing why this might be it for Doc Rivers as it relates to his head coaching in the NBA and the history for how he's gotten here. If you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe, and in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, Doc Rivers has been coaching in the NBA for a long time. One of the most games coached in the NBA among current coaches in the league. He actually began his coaching career in 1999 when he was hired by the Orlando Magic, and actually ended up winning Coach of the Year that season, as the Magic had exceeded expectations in a year where most had thought they would finish with the worst record in the league, but instead finished 500. Rivers would then go on to take the Magic to the playoffs the following season and would remain with the Magic until 2003, when the Magic let him go, which he was quickly picked up by the Boston Celtics. And despite the Celtics being pretty underwhelming as a team, where Doc really made a name for himself was when the Celtics won the championship in 2008 after assembling the big three of Paul George, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen, going from being a 24-win team to winning a championship. And while the Celtics remained a top team in the Eastern Conference throughout the rest of Rivers' tenure with that team, oddly enough, after the Celtics and Rivers agreed upon a 5-year extension in 2011, the Celtics actually traded Rivers to the Clippers in exchange for an unprotected first-round pick just 2 seasons later. Always weird when you see a team making trades for their own coach, but hey, good on the Celtics. They ended up getting a first-round pick out of it. Obviously, Doc would go on to coach the Clippers for a number of seasons, always putting together a competitive team, making the playoffs every single season with the exception of one, and that was mainly because of injuries. Then, of course, he would get fired after blowing a 3-1 series lead in the bubble, and would then take on the head coaching job for the Philadelphia 76ers to try to get them over the hump in winning a championship. But here's the thing. Throughout this time, it cannot be understated how much talent Doc Rivers has had on his rosters when he's a head coach. While the regular season success, sure, has been impressive, let's not forget that he had Blake Griffin and Chris Paul in their primes in his earlier days with the Clippers. After that experiment failed, and the Clippers made a pivot by snagging Kawhi Leonard as a free agent and getting Paul George in a trade from the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then, of course, more recently, with the Sixers having one of the most dominant big men in the league in MVP and Joel Embiid, in addition to James Harden, not to mention the talent around those guys with Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, even Ben Simmons before he fell off in late 2021. But regardless, Doc has always been surrounded by talent, superstar level talent. I didn't even mention the fact that he had the Celtics Big Three as well, which Doc was putting up losing season after losing season before the Big Three was assembled. So sure, the regular season success has been there. He's been one of the top winningest coaches in the league, but when it comes to the playoff success, that's a whole nother ballgame. Doc Rivers has continued to fail in getting his team to make deep runs in the playoffs. Now again, some of that is on the players. I've said before, coaches are sometimes used a little too much as scapegoats for the players' poor performances, or even the front office and the roster that they have constructed themselves. But regardless of that, when it becomes a pattern of continued failings, especially when it comes to elimination games in which Doc's teams has to take advantage of, they come up short. Doc is now 0-9 in his last 9 series clinching games, going back to 2015, 2 of which were 3-1 series leads that were blown. In 2015, the Clippers blew a 3-1 series lead to the Houston Rockets, and then again in the bubble when they blew a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets. A Nuggets team that had no business beating the star-studded power of the Clippers, who were healthy at that time, which is rare considering either Kawhi or Paul George have been injured, especially when it comes to playoff time. The loss in the bubble was especially bad because the Clippers had a big lead over the Nuggets in Game 5, up 3-1 in that series. Everyone thought it was over. The Clippers were finally going to be advancing to the conference finals for the first time, at least at that time anyway, it was a first, but ended up losing that game and obviously the subsequent Game 6 and 7. Funny enough, The Clippers actually made the conference finals after Doc was fired. And then more recently, losing Game 7 on their own home court against the Atlanta Hawks. That was the Simmons choke game, and of course this playoff series, which was ultimately what got Doc fired, losing Game 6 and 7 versus the Celtics. This after the Sixers had a 3-2 lead after stealing a game in Boston, and in Game 7 in Boston, this team looked checked out. Embiid and James Harden had horrible games, poor effort, looking lifeless and defeated as if they had already lost this series after the first quarter. You knew that it was done. And Tatum went off in the second half and the Celtics never looked back. So why does this keep happening? Why is it that wherever Doc Rivers seems to go, his team inevitably chokes in the postseason? He hasn't been able to get to the conference finals since 2012. Whenever his team does get a big lead in the series, they throw it away. Why? What's Doc Rivers doing wrong here? Well, the fact of the matter is, and I kind of alluded it at the top of the video, Doc is not as good of a coach as often he's made out to be. Rivers relies way too heavily on his star players, fails to make proper adjustments when it matters, and has continued to get out-coached in the playoffs, especially in Game 7s, which, by the way, Doc has lost the last 10 straight Game 7s that he's coached in. Let that sink in. You see, when a team goes down in a series, say they're down 3-1 or 3-2, they know they need to course correct and make the proper adjustments because clearly what they're doing isn't working. Pretty basic stuff. Something isn't working, you try and fix it. And when teams make adjustments after falling behind in a series, Doc has no idea how to respond to it. He keeps throwing the same plays out there over and over and hoping that it sticks, playing through his superstars, thinking, I've got the best player in the series, that's all I need. Teams have picked apart Doc when going into the playoffs because they know he's incapable of making the necessary adjustments over the course of a playoff series. And then on top of that, by Game 7, after Doc's teams failed to finish off the series, he loses the locker room. Guys aren't responding to him anymore. They're not motivated like they were. And it's why you see these awful outings from guys like Embiid and Harden in Game 7. Like I said, it's also on the players, and Embiid and Harden have to take accountability for how poorly they showed up in Game 7 versus the Celtics. But at the same time, as the coach, you have to be doing everything you can to inspire the guys, keep them motivated, keep them energized, and also just displaying to them that you know what the hell you're doing. So look, as good at times as Doc can be as a coach, he's had some success at the head coaching level. You can't deny that he's been fortunate to always be surrounded by superstar level players, and usually multiple star players. And when it comes to the postseason, aside from the one championship in 2008, Doc has been really bad when it comes to outsmarting the opposing team's coach. He's usually the one that is getting outsmarted and made to look like a fool. And it's one thing, hey, it happens once, twice, maybe 3 times. You go from a couple teams, maybe they just need a change of scenery, but 9 times, losing a series clinching game, 10 straight Game 7 losses dating back to his days with the Celtics. Yeah, that's bad. Teams are going to start to catch on at some point. And if they have a coaching vacancy, instead of viewing it as, well, Doc is available, we got to get him, like it used to be, it's now going to be, let's see who else is available, because we're trying to win a championship here. Doc, now 61, 24 straight seasons coaching in the NBA, I think this is it. He either calls it quits himself, sets off into retirement, or maybe he picks up some assistant coaching jobs here and there for a few seasons, but I don't think there's a chance we will ever see Doc Rivers as a head coach in the NBA again. Nah. I think teams have learned their lesson that this guy is fool's gold when it comes to coaching. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think this is it for Doc coaching in the NBA, or will he be back? Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.